Hello, and I want to welcome you to another exciting discussion on mathematics. Today's topic will be solving linear equations. So the topic with this will be that there will be one variable and we are solving for it. Okay, a linear equation in one variable can be written in the form ax plus b equals c, where a, b, and c are real numbers and a cannot be equal to 0. Okay, so I want to take this time to look at some steps on how to solve a linear equation with one variable. And I'm going to turn to the book for those steps. We'll come back and solve an example. Okay, so here are the best guidelines for solving a linear equation. Step 1, if an equation contains fractions, multiply both sides by the LSD, or least common multiple, to clear the equation of fractions. Use the distributive property to remove parentheses if they occur. That's step 2. Step 3, simplify each side of the equation by combining like terms. Step 4, get all variables terms on one side and all numbers on the other side by using the addition property of equality. Step 5, get the variable alone by using the multiplication property of equality. And finally, step 6, check the solution by substituting into the original equation. Sometimes you will see with instructors that step 6 will be optional, sometimes will be a requirement. So let's jump into an example and get started. If you need to, please refer back to this part of the video at any time. Let me just get us back in focus. And let's start. So example 1, solve the following and check solution. Okay, so we have 4 times the quantity x, or 2x minus 3 plus 7 equals 3x plus 5. So let's break down what we have. We have distributive property over addition, so we're going to need to take care of that. We don't have any fractions, so we are good to follow through. So the first thing I would do is take this 4 and distribute it across everything in that parentheses. Not this 7 because it's not in the parentheses, but the 2x minus 3. So I'm going to draw little arrows to remind me to multiply inside. So when we do that, let's see what we have. 4 times 2x, and remember that's a positive 4, so let's put positive 4 times negative 3, because 3 is a negative. Let's just bring the plus 7 equals. We haven't even touched this, so let's just bring it on down as well. So now it's like make the next step, go through and simplify. So 4 times 2x will have 8x. 4 times a negative 3, a positive times a negative gives you a negative, so we're going to have a negative 12. Bring that positive 7 on down, we haven't done anything with it, or this stuff on the right side of the equation. So we're just bringing stuff down. Okay, now let's do something with this left side. This 8x can't do anything with it just yet, but we have a minus 12 plus 7. If we simplify that, we're going to have a negative adding a positive. And since the negative is larger, we're going to have a negative answer. So 8x, and then finally we'll do it. So a negative 5 equals 3x plus 5. Okay, now the next rule is to get all the stuff, the variables on one side. I like to put them on the right side of the equation, excuse me, the left side, and then all the regular numbers that do not have a variable on the right side of the equation. So to do that, let's first add 5 on both sides. We're adding 5 because we have to do the opposite of this minus right here. This minus tells us it's a minus 5, so we have to do the opposite to get on the other side. So we're adding 5. So we'll have an 8x. Pen's giving out on me here. So 8x and minus 5 plus 5 gives us 0. So we'll just leave that 8x there. Have this 3x, bring it on down. And then we have a 5 plus 5. So that gives us 10. Okay, we're just still moving along with this equation. So now let's get all the stuff with the x's on the other side. This is a positive 3x right here, so we have to do the opposite to get on the other side. So let's subtract 3x on both sides. I like to draw that bar to keep my eyes and mind in check with what I'm doing. So 8x minus 3x, 8 minus 3, we have 5. Bring that x on down, equals, remember this positive 3x minus 3x gives us 0. So we'll just bring this 10 on down. Okay, now we're ready to get the x by itself. And since this 5 and x are being multiplied together, that's what that's saying, we have to do the opposite of that property, of that operation. The opposite of multiplication is division. So let's divide both sides by 5. So 5 divided by 5, that's 1, so that's just 1x, or just a lone x, equals 10 divided by 5. And when you simplify that, that's just going to give you 2. 2 is your answer. Now we found out what x is, but now we have to check it, because it's in the instructions. So to check it, just write down the original equation that you were given. 4 times the quantity 2x minus 3, close up parentheses, plus 7 equals 3x plus 5. Okay, and now what we do is just take what we've got for x and plug it in for every x we see. So 4 times the quantity 2 times 2, let x source replace it with a 2, minus 3, close that parentheses, add 7, equals 3. There's an x, so let's replace it with 2, plus 5. Okay, now let's just go through and simplify where those 2's were. So 4 times the quantity, 2 times 2 is 4, minus 3, close that parentheses, add 7, equals 3 times 2 is 6, plus 5. So now let's just simplify even down farther using the rules of operations, the order of operations. So we have to do what's in parentheses first. 4 times 4 minus 3 is 1, plus 7 equals, and we can just go ahead and add right here. 6 plus 5 is 11. Okay, let's keep going farther down. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 7 equals 11. And our final step will just be adding 4 and 7. So 11 equals 11. That is a statement that is always true. 11 always equals 11. So this checks out. If you had gotten an answer like 7 equals 11 or something like that, that statement does not make sense because 7 never equals 11. Therefore, we know you did something wrong and we would want to go back and check your answer. That was example 1. There's the full page if you'd like to see that. Now let's look at example 2. Example 2 has fractions. So we'll want to be careful when working with this. Okay, let's look at the least common denominator. We have a 2 and a 3 in there. Now, we couldn't do really anything with that, but we can use their product of 2 times 3 is 6. So if we multiplied 6 on both sides of the equation, we would get rid of these fractions pretty easily. Okay? And to do that, we're going to make it look like the distributive property in a way. So, and if we're multiplying 6 on both sides, we have to do the same thing on both sides. So it's really like we're doing nothing, but we're working with the equation to make it work for us. So let's multiply 6 on both sides of the equation, on both sides of the equal sign. And I'm going to read this off what I just wrote. 6 times the quantity x over 2 minus 1 equals 6 times the quantity 2 over 3x minus 3. Now, as you see, we just have that distributive property over addition. So let's just take care of that. Let's take this 6 and let's multiply it across everything that's in the parentheses. And we're just going to do this left side first so we don't get too confused on what we're doing. So this is going to simplify to 6 times x over 2. Okay, positive 6 times a negative 1. Okay, so now what I like to do is say that there's really like a 1 right in front of the 6. And with multiplication, we're just going to say 6 times 1. So that's going to be 6x over 2. And that's just going to be reducing to 3 because 6 over 2 is 3. And then we have our x right there, tagging along. Okay, and then a positive times a negative is a negative. And then 6 times 1 is just 6. Okay, that's the left side of the equation. Now let's look at the right side over here. We have the same thing going on. We need to distribute this 6 all the way across. So 6 times 2x over 3 minus 3. Or, excuse me. We're just distributing that across. Excuse me. Then we have the positive 6, because that's a positive 6 being distributed, times a negative 3. Now if we go through and simplify, if we were to say 6 times 2, that is 12. We just multiplied the big number times the numerator. So 6 times 2 is 12 divided by that numerator, that denominator that's still there. So 12 divided by 3, that gives us 4. And don't forget the little x tags along. Okay, then a positive times a negative, we have a negative. Okay, and a 6 minus 3 is 18. Excuse me, 6 times 3 is 18. Okay, now we're at a good step to be at. We can start getting all the x's on one side and all the regular numbers on the other side and start solving for a variable. Okay, so what I'd like to do is get all the x's on the left side and on the regular numbers on the right side. And we might have some negatives in there, but that's okay. We can work with that. So I'd like to start by getting rid of this 4x. I want to put it over here. We do the opposite of the sign. It's a positive, so we have to do a negative 4. Subtract 4 on both sides. I'd like to draw that line. So 3x minus 4x, or 3 minus 4 is a negative 1. Minus 6 equals, remember this is going to go to 0 because a positive 4 minus a negative 4 gives us 0. Look at negative 18. Okay, and I'm going to get that 6 on the right side. But that's a negative, so I have to do the opposite by adding 6 on both sides. So the negative 1x equals a negative 18 plus 6. And we know that since 18 is larger and we're adding, we're going to have a negative answer. So then we have negative 18 plus 6, and that's just going to give us 12. So right now we have a negative 1x divided by negative 12. Okay, now we're solving for just x, so we can't have that negative in there. So it's a negative 1 times x. We have to do the opposite, so we have to divide. Divide by a negative 1 on both sides. So x is just going to leave us with a negative divided by a negative gives us a positive. Anything divided by 1 is just whatever is on top. So we're just left with x equals 12. Okay, now we have to check our answer. Remember, this is an optional step for some instructors. Sometimes you want to do it, sometimes you won't. So what I like to do is just write the original equation back down. X divided by 2 minus 1 equals 2 divided by 3x minus 3. So now what you do is just plug in everywhere you see an x with a 12, because that's what we found it x to be. So let's do that. So we have 12 divided by 2. We just took the x on top and plus the 12 on top. Minus 1 equals 2 divided by 3, or 2/3, times 12 minus 3. So right here, 12 divided by 2, that's going to become 6 minus 1. Okay, and 6 minus 1 is 5. Let's work on this right side again. Okay, so let's see. 2 over 3 times 12. Well, what you can do is say this 12 is over 1, because any number is over 1 that is not a fraction. Okay, and now we can do what's called crossing out, or cross multiplication, or however you want to say it. Cross simplification, I guess you could even say it. So you could say 3 will go into 12 4 times. So you can say 3 will go into itself 1 time, 3 will go into 12 4 times. So you're just left with 2 times 4, and that's 8. Minus 3, and because we just brought the 3 on down, so we're left with 8 minus 3, which is 5. You see, that checks, because 5 always equals 5. Okay, let's move on to our final example. That would be example 3. Okay, if you look, we're asked to solve and check. Okay, we are looking at something that has a fraction, but it's just a plain number on one side. So we have to kind of free that left side of that 3 so we can start working with stuff. And the way to take care of that is to actually use those rules we were just looking at. If we multiplied 3 on both sides, we would free the left side of the 3 on the bottom, that denominator. So if we take care of that, because what we do on one side, we have to do on the other. And if you see, 3 up here and the 3 on the bottom is just going to cancel out, make it 1, leaving you with what's on top of the fraction. And if we rewrite what we had on top here, it looks like we just have 2 distributive properties over addition. We can do with this, we can work with this. So if we look on this left side, we have this 2 and it needs to be distributed across everything in that parentheses. In the same way over here we have this 3 that needs to be distributed on everything on the parentheses. Let's hop to it. So we start with 2 times a plus a positive 2 times a positive 3. Let's go ahead and just simplify out on this left side of the equation. Then we'll go back to the right. So 2 times a is 2a, and a positive times a positive is a positive. 2 times 3 is 6. Let's go back to our right. Okay, on the right side. We have this 3 wanting to be distributed across everything on the right side, on this parentheses. So 3 times 6a, and we'll have a 3 times a 2. So let's go write that out. 3 times this first term, 6a, close parentheses. Remember we have a positive 3, so write plus 3, times what's left here. That's a positive 2, so let's just write a 2. Okay, let's simplify. 3 times 6 is 18. That a wants to hang around. Okay, and then 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, we're good. We are going to be able to solve for a, because we have just some numbers with variables, and we just have some regular numbers. So we're going to solve for a, getting all the stuff with a on the left side and all the regular numbers on the other side, on the right side of the equation. So let's start by getting this this 18a on the other side. So let's subtract 18a on both sides of the equation, because they're the opposite of what's right here. So right here, 2 minus 18, remember we take the higher number as the sign, so we have a negative, and 2 minus 8, or negative 18 plus 2, if you want to say it like that, you have a negative 16a. Okay, we have our plus 6 equals 6. Okay, now we want to get rid of this 6 right here, because we want to get the negative 16a by itself. To do that, let's do the opposite sign of the plus 6. Let's subtract 6 on both sides. Negative 16a equals, because this is going to go to 0. And what's going to happen over here? It too will go to 0. Well, we have to get a by itself, and to do that we have to divide, because looking at the negative 16a, negative 16 is being multiplied by a. So let's divide by negative 16 on both sides of the equation. When we do that, what do we have? We have 0 divided by negative 16. And what does that simplify to? Simplifies to 0. So we found out what a is, just using these simple steps for solving the linear equation. Now we have to check our solution, because it's in our instructions. So let's check. Let's start by rewriting the same equation that we were given in the beginning. It's right here in black. I'm going to rewrite that here. So we'll have 2 times the quantity a plus 3 all over 3 equals 6a plus 2. Now remember, we don't want to do any of thing like we did a while ago by multiplying 3 on both sides. We're just checking. So everywhere we see an a, let's put a 0 in its place. So 2 times the quantity, let's plug a 0 in for a, plus 3, all that's going to be over 3, equals 6 times 0, because a is equal to 0, plus 2. Just keep simplifying. We're doing great so far. So what's going to happen here? Well, it's just going to be 3, because 0 plus 3 is 3. So we can go ahead and simplify that. That's 2 times 3. Well, that's 6. And then we have our fraction. Just leave that 3 right there. What's happening over here? 6 times 0 is 0. We're just left with this positive 2, because 0 plus 2 is 2. Okay, and what's finally going to happen? We have this equal 2, just bring it on down, and then we look at this fraction, 6 divided by 3, simplify that to 2. And as you see, 2 equals 2. That checks out.